Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. The full tape review with Jeff Mosher and today's guest, Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Caplan NFL on Twitter, as it's Dallas week. And it's exciting for me, Adam, because typically, when I get to talk to you, it's not during one of the more high-profile weeks of the football season. But here we are on a Wednesday with the Eagles and Cowboys playing on a Saturday. How you doing today?
Good, my friend. Look, growing up here in the Delaware Valley, it was something else. Dallas Eagles, to me, Josh, I would have to say, Sixers Celtics, because I was a huge Sixers fan.
Right.
Growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, through the 80s. The heat that the Celtics drew here was tremendous. But Dallas is at actually another level. The hatred that Eagle fans had and some of the stuff that would go on, it was so great when the Eagles beat the Cowboys in the 80 championship game here at the Vet. And it's just, the good thing is it's been a while since both teams have been competitive at the same time. They actually have something on the line. Moshe and I were talking about this weeks ago. Wouldn't it be great if that Week 16 game on Christmas Eve would have some meaning? And sure does, because if they win it all. They win the division. They have the number one seed. The other way they could get that first round bye, if they tie, the Vikings lose to the Giants or the Vikings tie. So again, it's real simple to cure all this issue. Just win, and it's all solved. And then the question is who starts resting in Week 17 versus the Saints.
And Adam, something that you and Jeff have talked about on the podcast is that in similar mold to 2017, they're in a position to lock up the 1 seed because of everything that happened in the previous weeks, the build up to this point. So, you want to win on Saturday in Dallas, but it's not the end of the world if you don't.
Right. And look, they play the Saints. In fact, I know the way some Eagle fans, Josh, are. They want them to beat New Orleans because they want to dig that grave in the Saints season. Yep. Because they want that better pick. They saw what happened to Miami last year when Miami shocked the world and turned their season around, wound up having a winning record. But this looks too good to be true with the Saints. Although the Saints playing a little bit better lately, particularly defensively. So yeah, look, we know. The Eagles are going to get the number one seed. We all know this is going to happen. It's just a matter of what week it's going to happen. I really believe Gardner Minshew, who's going to start this week, could do really well. We'll get to him in a second. The really cool interview we have with John DeFilippo, the former Eagles quarterbacks coach, for our Patreon subscribers only. Josh, go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to sign up for a subscription. We literally we tried him. He picked the phone up. He said, "I'll do it," and it was wonderful. And my goodness gracious, he talked like almost 10 minutes about Minshew, and I feel a lot better about Minshew. Not that I didn't, but I feel that he's a guy that you saw last year against the Jets do pretty well, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But overall, this is an interesting setup because you've got the Cowboys down who've got an illness. They've had illness problems really throughout their season. They had some players miss games with an illness. Michael Parsons missed 2 days of practice already. We'll see what happens tomorrow. As long as he gets there limited tomorrow, I'm sure he'll play. But remember now, Josh, tomorrow's the last day of practice for the week.
Yeah, it's a huge part of the conversation because the game is Saturday and not Sunday, so the turnaround's a lot quicker. Before we get to the Eagles specifically, let's talk about who Gardner Minshew will be seeing, or shall I say not be seeing, on the other side of the field, Adam. We know that Anthony Brown done for the year. We know that Leighton Vander Esch will not play on Saturday, so the Cowboys defense that just gave up over 500 total yards to Jacksonville is down players facing Philadelphia this Saturday.
Yeah, so they're down 2 corners. Anthony Brown tore his Achilles. He's done for the season. He's more their nickel corner after Jordan Lewis was lost due to a broken foot. And Jonathan Hankins, they acquired in a trade from the Raiders. He's on IR. Won't return to the playoffs with his right shoulder injury. The run defense is not very good. They struggled last week against Travis Etienne, the Jaguars running back. Their pass rush was not very good last week at Jacksonville. They scored a lot of points, but their defense did not play well. Let's call it like it is. You mentioned Van Der Esch with his neck injury. He's had a history of neck problems. Now, this neck issue, as I understand, is not related to the previous one, which he had neck surgery on, but he's not playing this week. They're probably going to go with rookie Damone Clark as a 5th rounder. And I mentioned Micah Parsons. So, yeah, they've got issues on defense. Now, offensively, they lost right tackle Terrence Steele for the season. This surprised me. Tyron Smith, who's been a left tackle his entire career, remember, he tore his hamstring off the bone, unfortunately, to start very early in the season. He came back before the season ended. He started last week at right tackle. Jason Peters, of all people, replaced him when they thought he needed a rest. Peters got 20-some-odd snaps, so that's what they'll do at right tackle. They left Tyler Smith, their rookie left tackle, at left tackle, although Tyler Smith out of Tulsa did play guard in training camp. He got beaten out for that job, so they've had a bunch of changes here on the offensive line, but the offensive line's not the problem. It's really defensively against the run. Can they get a pass rush against the Eagles? Eagles have the best offensive line, and there's some interesting matchups in this game.
Speaking of those matchups, Adam, the other side of the ball for the Eagles, they did get some good news aside from Dallas Goedert being put on the roster again this week. We also have Reed Blankenship and Kavon Wallace sightings at practice.
Yeah, so Kavon Wallace will be okay. He's a hip injury. Here's the big news of the week. I know it's the guy's a backup, but he may have to start again. We'll see how they want to manipulate the safety position in for Gardner Johnson. But right now, they expect Blankenship, who also practiced today. He participated in their walkthrough. They believe he'll be able to play. Now, the question is, will he be able to play a full game on Saturday? He's coming back from what I believe is a grade 1 MCL sprain. So will he have full range of motion? They'll have to get through the practice tape and see if he could do that. But they manipulated that safety position pretty well last week, playing 2 guys there. And it worked. It really did work. They kind of knew that they get through with it with those 2 guys. And the Bears have a very poor passing game, and that proved out to be true. The Eagles' run defense wasn't great. They leaked some oil there. Obviously, a big part of that was against Justin Fields. But the good thing is, one person told me, NFL guy, says, I don't think Philly's going to have to worry about anyone like him again until potentially the Super Bowl, maybe Josh Allen or somebody like that.
Adam Caplan joining us here for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast at Caplan NFL on Twitter. Adam, let's take one more look at the Bears game and what the tape said. Now, you and Jeff went deeper into this on the podcast this morning, so we'll do some cursory overviews where something you have talked about a lot is the Eagles' desire to want to pass, and it seemed like they were very intent to not get away from the passing game against Chicago.
It was remarkable. So I talked to 3 people who were at the game. One person who I thought had really good information said, it was cold as hell, really cold, coldest game. This person who works in the NFL said it's one of the coldest games he's attended, but he goes, the wind would swirl, and then there were times it was flatter, and maybe that's why they thought they could throw it. And only Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator, didn't really get asked any questions specifically about the wind that I saw or heard. But nevertheless, we said going in the game that they're going to pass this game. I know the run numbers are what they were. They could run the ball anytime they want. They strangely did not give Miles Sanders a carry for the first 4 series, which is bizarre to me. Even Sirianni knew. I believe when he talked about it, Josh, earlier this week, I think he was actually truthful. That shouldn't happen. It's not like we're saying he has to get 10 carries, but you should mix the run in a little bit.
Right.
Because Chicago is a bad front. But nevertheless, look, it worked. I mean, think about it, Josh. Through the wind and Hurts admitting that he couldn't feel his hands. I do wonder if he told the coaches this, but nevertheless, their 2 starting receivers combined for over 300 yards. A.J. Brown had a career day over 190. But it's just really incredible. And we've told people that we told our listeners on Inside the Birds when we went over the coaching staff in 2021, they want to throw the football. Now, they tried it early last year, Josh. Well, Hurts struggled. They took the ball out of his hands. They became a greater running offense. But they knew for them to be a great football team, they had to throw the football. Eagles helped him. Hurts had a great offseason, and he's put it together here. And by the way, with Gardner Minshew, that's kind of why I brought this up. They're not going to hide Gardner Minshew. They don't believe in doing that. I'm not saying they won't run the football against the Cowboys. You can certainly run it. That's their weakness. But they're not going to throw the ball 20 times. Let's get up, unless it's 30-0. Like the Packer game when they scored over 40 and Packers decide not to tackle anyone, they're going to throw the football.
You mentioned about what they did last year versus this year. What does it say to you, Adam, that Shane Steichen keeps putting these shot plays into the game, these deep throws? in many ways, you could argue that might be the biggest sign of Jalen Hurts' development is the coach's confidence in him to call those plays.
Well said. That is probably the number one criteria for evaluating a quarterback. It's the amount of pass plays in the first half. That's what Joe Banner taught me, the former Eagles president, when Joe and I worked together at ESPN. We went through his philosophy that he learned in their gathering when Jeffrey Lurie bought the team and he came in as the president. They did a lot of research, and the best way to evaluate how a team thinks about a quarterback, it's time tested. It's really hard to challenge it, is how many pass plays they call versus run in the first half. The Eagles historically have been a heavy pass team in the first half. It's not like they won't run it, but it's somewhere between 60 and 65% pass. It's above the league average, and that's what this staff is. We're going to go over those numbers. I don't know if we'll go over those numbers for a Sunday pregame show, but we're going to have it for our pregame people, certainly by the Saints game. And the Eagles are super heavy pass in 2017. That's what they believe in their building. And by the way, that's why they win. These defensive head coaches that don't get it, that's why they don't last.
By the way, the Eagles injury report just dropped online here. As expected, Jalen Hurts is a DNP. Zach Pascal, we didn't get a chance to talk about him yet, Adam. He is still out with a concussion. I'm assuming that means he's in concussion protocol. If he's not practicing, that means that he's not that far along in the process, right?
Yeah. So Josh, here's the strange thing. I don't know if you noticed this. I put a note on Twitter yesterday after it came out. So the Eagles issued a second injury report, adding Pascal to the injury report after practice with a concussion, which almost certainly, and we've had this happen before, when we've evaluated some of these injuries that have happened, they've had guys suffer concussions in practice, and that's almost certain that what happened here. So, yeah, it's bad, and they're on a short week, which makes it very difficult for him to get clear because he's not progressed. Like tomorrow is their last day of practice, and the injury they have to actually give the game status designation questionable, doubtful, or out. So it's not looking good. And here, someone asked me this on Twitter, so I'll just address it right now. Moshe and I were talking about this through text. It's funny. They at one point in the season on the practice squad, they had 5 receivers on the practice squad. They only have 2 now. Greg Ward, who could only play the slot, and Devin Allen, who's just learning how to play receiver. So you can't. I guess it would be Greg Ward, and obviously Britton Covey, if they need him to, could play slot receiver. But this is. I don't want to say it would be a big loss. Don't overestimate what it is. But he blocks excellent for the run game. Good special teams player. Physical guy. Not a really good fourth receiver. It just you don't want this to be going on right now for a team that needs to wants to really want to win this game. That's a little bit of a downer.
What's interesting is you mentioned guys on the podcast this morning about how heavy 11 personnel was used against Chicago. Now, that's without Goddard on the field. So with Pascal not out there, is it a situation where when Goddard's on the field more, does that maybe take them out of some of those personnel groupings?
I don't think so, because because Quez Watkins is their 3. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that would matter. And Goddard, they could. The good thing about Goddard coming back is they could go heavy 11 or heavy 12. Goddard obviously in 12 personnel with Jack Stoll, who the coaches love as a blocker, and then go 11 with the aforementioned Quez Watkins. So they'll be fine with it. It's just it's a little you can't they're in position now. They only have 3 guys left in the rotation with Pascal out, and they're going to have to do something about it. And the only thing they could do is bring Greg Ward up, quite frankly. Now, does it mean that they could also move Goddard around a little bit more? They could also, by the way, use Grant Calcaterra, who's done a better job blocking. So there's some ways to alleviate this issue.
Yeah, Calcaterra, I think, has been the real surprise over the last few weeks without Goddard, the way he has stepped up. So maybe we see him more down the stretch. One more on the offense, Adam, really quick. I just wanted to touch on with you about the fact that, do you think that the Eagles are going to continue to run those deep shot plays with Minshew with Hurts out?
Okay, so last year, Josh, you remember the Jets game when he started, he played really well. Now I understand the Jets defense last year is completely different from this year. So this year they've got one of the best defenses in football. They shut everyone down. Last year they weren't shutting anyone down.
Right.
And they took shots, deep overs to Goddard. Goddard and Minshew had a great game. Great for fantasy, by the way. I know people were bummed last week. By the way, Goddard went on the record this week. He said he was ready to go. The MRIs were clean last week, but they made a decision to hold him out an extra week. And they also had a roster spot. It was kind of weird. And we still never got a straight answer why they held him out. He was physically ready to go, but okay. So they got him back to practice Wednesday, and he's good to go. But no, again, just as I would reiterate, that they're going to throw the football. Now, are they going to take the deep, a deep shot, a shot play to Quez Watkins? Probably not. That I'm glad you brought this up because Minshew does not have a very strong arm. He's good into the short intermediate area. The tight end will be involved, but I just don't see them taking super deep shots over 30 yards. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I can totally see Dallas Cowboys having a huge game on Saturday, but I don't see a scenario where Quez is catching like 60-yard bombs down the field in this game.
No, I don't, because that's the thing. So, and by the way, he is not on the injury report this week. He had that shoulder issue, but thankfully he's not on the injury report.
Adam, real quick before I let you go, a couple of questions on the defensive side of the ball. Man, did they create pressure in that game? Reddick and Sweat, I mean, they are turning into a dynamic duo coming after quarterbacks.
I find it hard to believe that right now, Josh, that there is a better edge rusher tandem in the National Football League. The Eagles run a 34 front is really what the technical term is. I know some people call it a 5-2. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is those two edge rushers are phenomenal. I love when they meet at the quarterback. It's like the coolest thing. They're just really, really good. This is one of the best tandems in the National Football League. And Reddick is I don't know how to say this. I thought he'd be good, but not this good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just blown away. And he better be in Pro Bowl consideration. And Sweaty's been even more consistent. What a story he's been. And let's not forget his football career was almost ended in high school.
Yeah, and the knee injury situation has always been kind of that weird thing that loomed over him in the draft process. That's the reason why he dropped so far in the draft. Adam, from what you understand, what the people are telling you, what is going to be the biggest difference for this Eagles defense from the Bears to the Cowboys? Is it the offensive line? Is it the quarterback? What do you think is going to be the biggest difference?
Oh, boy. Well, when you look at Dallas, their offensive line is way better. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing that you know. They're way better. It's not like the best Dallas line of all time, but it's a solid line. That's not the issue. Dak Prescott has been very inconsistent coming back from his injury. And now the Cowboys defense, up till about 3 weeks ago, was lights out. They're struggling right now. So, and they're down two corners, as we talked about. They don't stop the run very well. They're leaking oil. The Eagles, see, before we get out of here, I haven't picked against the Eagles all season. By the way, the Eagles have the longest road winning streak in the National Football League, going back to last November. They've won 9 in a row. They haven't lost since it's almost been 13 months, Josh, since they lost a road game. That's the most incredible record that you could give on this team by far. It's just incredible. And I'm probably going to pick the Eagles. We'll talk more on Friday. I need to do a little bit more work on this, but I'm feeling pretty good with Minshew being the quarterback. And specifically Goddard coming back. Without Goddard, it's a different story.
I said earlier, Adam, I'll say it again. The 3 highest scoring games that the Cowboys defense has allowed this year all happened after the Eagles game. So.
Oh yeah, from earlier this season. Yeah. And by the way, they were awful that game against the Eagles in defense.
Yeah. So, hey, how many times have you and Jeff talked about when teams get tape on you, it makes a huge difference.
It is, and I think the injuries are catching up to them, and that's why you have to have good depth. The Eagles have better depth at certain positions. The Cowboys may be deeper at corner. They definitely are, but they're not better. The Eagles are actually much better at corner. And the Eagles also most likely have the best starting 22 when everyone's healthy in the NFL.
At Caplan NFL on Twitter. Check out the latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. The full tape review of Eagles and Bears. And, of course, Adam will be back on Friday to give a further deeper preview into Dallas Eagles on Christmas Eve. Adam, great stuff today.
All right, Josh, thank you.